Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on today's webinar. We're so excited to be able to provide tips and tricks for managing work-life balance for you all through this stressful time. We're very fortunate to have Sylvia Corzato from Success in Steps as our facilitator today. Sylvia is a parent consultant who works with parents and professionals to provide awareness that will enable them to understand how to address their primary area of needs. Her vast experiences combined with her studies in psychology, sociology certifications in counseling children and adolescents, coaching, and her extensive training in applied behavioral analysis and intensive behavior intervention enables her to understand the special moments and challenges in parenting. As a mother of 2 children, she has a personal and practical understanding of the joys and challenges of parenting that are faced daily. Sylvia is a consultant who assists those in need. Her objective is to help families make small adjustments to make big improvements. Throughout our webinar today, if you have any questions, feel free to use both the Q&A or the chat function at the bottom of your screen anytime, and we'll ensure that these get addressed. Over to you, Sylvia.
Thank you, Christy, and thank you for having me this morning. I'm very excited to be here today. Our world has kind of flipped upside down for us all. We weren't expecting all these uncertain changes that have been happening, and so with that, we need to adjust and accommodate to our new reality for the time being, and finding work-life balancing with our need to work from home. So today I'm going to be offering you guys a lot of support. I know it's a very difficult time. I'm a mother of 2 as well, and so with that, I completely understand how it has impacted both myself with my work, with my husband's work, and for the adjustment of accepting the change in the new reality for my 2 kids, and the transition that are being put in place for both us as adults and for our kids as well. So today in this workshop, this webinar, here are some key takeaways that you will receive from this webinar, and they include how to prioritize your time for both family and work, how clear expectations will save you time. And I'm going to be speaking a lot about clear expectation within this webinar because it really is the foundation of how things are going to turn out, the outcomes that you're looking for. I'm going to be speaking about how to learn how responding rather than reacting to situations will get you further ahead, and also help your children to understand better what is expected of them, and understand how work-life balance can have a positive impact on you and your family. So those are our key takeaways. And originally we were going to be doing this workshop in person, but given the recent circumstances, we are offering this webinar to you in this format, and it has been modified so that we can talk about work-life balance when we are going to be going back to work, but outside of our home, that is, but we're going to be focusing more on work-life balance at home right now, and how you can find a happy medium between your roles as a professional and then your role as parent as well. Now, Christy did a great, thank you very much for that, Christy, for that introduction about me. I just wanted to share with you guys a little bit of where my specializations focused on, so you understand, what makes her a parent consultant. I'm a behavior coach. Now, Christy offered up a very nice introduction, and thank you for that again, Christy. I'm a parent consultant and behavior coach, and I've been in the field for 19 years. I've evolved over the years in my profession of being a one-on-one instructor therapist, and then an intake worker and addressing the family's strengths and needs. But all in all, it's always been providing support to the parents and the families in order to get them to where they want to be with their family objectives, and tackling behavioral challenges and making it something of the past, and working with strategies that could be modified for your child's needs and for your family's needs as they grow up as well. So I have practical and personal experience. As I said, I'm a mother of 2. My children are now 13 and 11, and most of the information that I share with you guys, I put into place as well. I practice what I preach 100%. And when I say most, is that because not all the strategies are required for my children, but if something is required, I implement it and I follow through. Now, my specialization and area of focus have been with typically developing children, but also children with ADD, ADHD, anxiety disorder, autism, learning disability, and nonverbal children have also been an area that I've supported a lot in the past, and focusing on behavioral challenges, non-compliance, defiance, school challenges at school with kids being suspended, and also stress management as well. So before we get into all the information within this webinar, these are a few questions that I did want to share with you guys and ask you guys before we proceed. Now, this was something prior to us all shifting at home, but they're really great questions to ask yourself. So think about when you were at work, and you can also think about at home, because these things really do play factor on how that work-life balance is playing out for you. So do you feel like you get enough time for yourself? You can ask yourself that question both on how, when it was that you were going to work, but also how it is right now. Finding time for yourself is really important with the work-life balance. Do you take your 30-minute lunch, or if you're fortunate enough to have an hour lunch, do you do that away from your desk and make yourself unavailable to others work-related during that time? So it's really time for yourself and for you to hit the reset button. Do you lose your temper at home or at work? Do you miss out on quality time with friends and family due to work? Do you have a hard time focusing on the task at hand? If you answered yes, we are going to discuss how we can improve this today, both in your new reality and when we are capable to go back to work in your environment and other outside of your home, that is. So work-life balance means organizing and managing all aspects in both your personal and your professional lives. And that's really important. But how do we do that is by prioritizing your time. So within your personal life, we have our family, we have self-care, we have sports and exercise and hobbies, time to spend with friends, and time to spend alone with your partner, which is really important. In our professional life, we have to set work hours, take lunch breaks away from your desk, and utilize and automate emails as well. Utilize your automated email response. And I'm going to talk about how that's really important. So let's start off with your personal life. When we have to prioritize, when is it time to be with your family? You have to be present with your family during that time. And what I really encourage families to do is that you don't carry your cell phone with you. I mean, I know that we use our cell phone for a bunch of different things, but if we're going to have our work emails and such on our cell phone as well, maybe put a notification on there or a mute on there so that we're not getting emails on the weekend, so it's not disturbing ourselves. And we can also implement the utilizing of automated email response to make clear expectations with our colleagues and people that we need to respond to as to set hours that you can expect a response by. So I'll respond to you within 24 to 48 hours, or expect a response Monday to Friday between the hours of 9 to 5. Those kind of things are making clear expectations for the people that are trying to reach you so that you don't feel overwhelmed and have to be separating your attention. Work-life balance is tied with our expectation and boundaries and lack thereof. So take me for example this morning. This morning, I had to share with my family that I was going to be on this webinar. And the reason that I wanted to share that with them is because I wanted to make my expectations clear to my family that I didn't want to be disturbed during this time so that I can provide you with my full attention. In order for this to happen, I have to make my expectations clear. In our household, we use a dry erase board, and my dry erase board is actually a makeshift board. It's just a frame that I got at the dollar store. I put a white piece of paper behind the glass portion of it and put the backing back on, and we just write on it, and we write down the expectations for everyone in the house. Now, I use this technique, and I've been using this technique ever since the kids were toddlers, and it's basically just been modified appropriately for their age and development as they grew up. So what that means is that at the very beginning, I was using a visual schedule, which I'm going to provide you with an example of, but now that my kids are older, they don't need the visuals, and I can just write things down. Now, by writing down to my kids what my expectation was, is that between 11 and 12:30, I wouldn't be available. I also provided them with my expectations of them of what I would like them to do during that time. So my son has his homework that was the teacher sent home that he should be completing during this time. And my daughter has her homework that I'm fortunate that her teacher also sent home as well. So they both have homework that they are expected to do during this time. The expectations are clear of what they need to do, and the expectation is also clear that I can't be disturbed during this time. And that's where the boundaries come into place as well. So the other aspect that we need to understand is that when we have ourselves at home and our kids at home, we have to understand that everybody has different strengths and needs. And the strengths and needs of ourselves are going to vary drastically amongst everyone within the household. So we have to be really sensitive and empathetic during this time, that that we have a lot of different emotions that are happening as well as everyone's staying at home. Maybe someone in your household is not great at occupying themselves and need the constant attention. Or maybe that is one of their strengths, or maybe it's kind of too much of a strength that they're isolating themselves and playing with video games or playing with toys and don't want to be socializing with others. Everything can be looked at as a strength and a need. So we just really need to take into consideration what are our strengths and needs and what are our children's strengths and needs when we're putting these expectations in place along with these boundaries. Now, for my children, I'm going to use my children as an example a lot because I'm speaking from both a personal and a professional perspective here. I know what my children's strengths and needs are because we've been working at turning needs into strengths, and we've been incorporating them into their daily routine as well. I'm not going to give them an area of, say, playing alone for a long time if I know that that's not an area of strength. I might make that expectation to be for a shorter window of time and with something that they are going to be interested in playing with. Motivation definitely comes into a key factor here. We wouldn't want our children to be playing, or make that expectation of our children playing with something on their own if it's not an activity that they enjoy. A child is going to be more inclined in occupying themselves in an activity on their own and being able to fulfill that expectation to play on their own if they have been offered up something that they do enjoy or they find motivating. So a key takeaway for this is that motivation is key. We're not going to be our children are not going to be motivated to keep themselves occupied so we can get some work done unless they are motivated to do the activity. Now you might be saying, well, your kids are doing homework right now. Where's the motivation? And that's a very fair question, but the way that our day has been structured since we came back from our March break, which we didn't go anywhere, but during that time, there wasn't any homework in place for our kids. But when we did come back into our regular routine, Monday to Friday, the kids' expectations are clear, whereby they do their homework in the morning, and then we have fun activities and tasks and some free time in the afternoon. So just so that you understand where the motivation is for that, I implement what I call a first then approach. First, they need to get their tasks done, which are the less motivating tasks, but they do have breaks in between there. And then after lunch, we get to do activities that we can enjoy as a family, so we can spend some time together, if we're still having to do work, they can do some activities that are independent, but activities that they want to do as opposed to their studies. So I'm just going to share with you, as I mentioned, strengths and needs. It's the same for parents as it is for children. And we have to also understand that a child's strength and needs can vary drastically based on their chronological age and developmental age. The two are very different. We can have a child that is 3 years old, but presents themselves as a 5-year-old, or vice versa, a child that is 5 years old, but developmentally, they're not, all of their skill levels are not at the same at what their their chronological age is. So maybe they're 5 years old, but they have some needs in different areas, and they present themselves a little bit younger. We all develop at different rates. So just keeping that into mind, we also have to look at environmental factors and external stresses. And right now, there are a lot of environmental factors, the whole component that we're not allowed to be out of our house for any period of time, really. Here, we're only allowed to go out for the necessities of groceries, and we're no longer to be going to parks or anything like that. So it's just a matter of going on walks and keeping our physical distance. That's a huge change for our children to have to embrace, and for us as well. So we just have to be very empathetic about that. I know that my kids have been asking a lot of questions, as you know, and I'm sure you guys as well, like why? And I know that they can be overbearing for us as parents to always have to answer those questions, but just keep in mind that our children are trying to make sense of their new reality right now. So really getting down to their eye level and answering their question by giving them their full attention, giving your children your full attention is going to help them understand, make them understand that, you know, you're really providing them with what you know, and it provides them with a sense of comfort when you do provide them with full attention. In our household, ever since the kids were young, whenever I wanted to provide them with an instruction or wanted to share something with them, I'd always say to them, hey guys, looking eyes, listening ears. So I know that if I have their eyes, I'll also have their ears. And the same thing they do to me as well, even to this date. They say, hey Ma, if I'm trying to multitask, looking eyes, listening ears. And it's very true. There's a lot of power in that saying, because we're always having split attention. And when we're under stress or we're feeling pressure of so many different uncertainties right now, we tend not to be focused. And if we stay focused, we're finding more of a balance for that work-life balance as well. So a little home remedy that I like to talk about is, again, as I mentioned, clear expectation is something you're going to hear a lot during this webinar. So to get your child to listen at home when you're trying to get some work done and trying to have a balance, it's a half a cup of clear expectations, half a cup of consistency, which means following through, and a generous sprinkle of your child's motivation. And if you do that daily, you're going to see that your expectations are now going to turn into routine. And it's going to help to provide more of a work-life balance if there is a sense of structure in your household, so that the expectations are clear. So when we have clear expectations, we get compliance from our children. When we have unknowns or uncertainties, we get resistance and we get a lot of challenges. So you might be asking right now, how do we deliver expectation? The best way to deliver expectation is to tell them in advance. You have to take into consideration, pardon me, the strength and needs of your child during this point. If you have a child that if you tell them too far in advance, then they're just going to be asking you 1,000,001 questions and start perseverating over it, then you want to hold off and tell them a little bit closer to. If you have a child that absolutely requires to be told in advance, because if you don't, they have a difficult time with accepting change or transitioning from one task to another, then this is when you do want to tell them in advance so that they can implement their coping strategies to embrace what the change is or the expectation is. You want to present it in an age-appropriate manner. And the hint here is we're going to be using visuals, and I'm going to show you how to be implementing that. We want to be consistent and remind them each time. So I have a lot of parents that ask me, well, I just told them the other day they should know. They don't. Don't ever expect our children to know. They'll only remember things that motivate them. So never assume that they will remember from the last time. And the key to this is, unless they tell you what they have to do before you actually finish what the expectation is, that's when you know that they know, when they're actually repeating it back to you. So as my kids are older, they tend to repeat something back to me. Well, then I know that they got it. I'm like, awesome, great, go at it. And so it's not responded with anything hostile. It's responded with, great, I'm glad that you know what you have to do. Okay, great job. You go and do that, and then we'll go do something else afterwards, or whatever the situation may be. And then communicate the rules with others. When you're putting new expectations in place, so if you have your home office and it has to be off limits and it's a certain time during the day whereby you shouldn't be disturbed, then communicate what your expectations are with the kids and with whoever else is in your household as well. So if your partner is there, if you have your parents living with you, whatever the case may be, make sure that the expectations are delivered across the board so that everyone can be on the same page, because when the consistency is there, the expectations are going to be able to be absorbed and taken seriously. And so you have a lot less resistance from the children. And so you have a better outcome, and you're going to have a better sense of peace, so that you're not stressed with someone opening your door, knocking at your door, screaming mom or dad or whatever the case may be, and being disruptive. You'll be able to focus on your work during that time, and then when it's time for you to be spending with them, then they'll have your full attention during that time. So as I mentioned in the previous slide, is that the hint there is to provide visuals. Now, visuals are huge for communicating. Visuals support our little ones to communicate, especially when our little ones are not able to fully communicate themselves. I strongly encourage the use of visuals to help our children to communicate, because it's going to reduce a lot of their frustrations, and it's going to provide them with another means of communication. So 80% of our communication is actually visual. And if you think about it, when you're driving and you see a billboard, what's going to grab your attention first generally is going to be the picture that they have associated to their campaign, and then you're going to read the writing that is associated with it. So 80% of our communication is visual. They provide very clear expectations when we are providing it with our children. They help our children with transition. For those that have difficulty with transition, allowing them to know what's coming next often helps children to transition from one task to another, whether it is most preferred or least preferred task. By knowing what's coming next is definitely beneficial. They help with accepting the change from one task to another, and they help children communicate before they have words, as I already mentioned. So it allows that frustration to de-escalate when they have another means of communication. Now, as I shared with you, I use the dry erase board for my children, and it is something that, as I said, has transitioned in terms of format throughout as they grew up. So now I'm going to share with you an example of a visual schedule that you can use. It's a visual schedule that has images and words, and I'll share with you how you can implement this. Now, what's great about this, incorporating this, is going to help with the work-life balance at home, so that you can modify your visual schedule however a way that you like. I encourage you to use pictures for anyone that is 6 and under. So if their reading skills are not at par, they won't be able to connect with the visual schedule. And that's the whole purpose of the visuals, is for them to be able to understand what is happening next. So let me go ahead and share that with you. So here's an example of a visual schedule that is the out of school routine, as I call it. So for a child to know that they are to wake up, and then the expectation is to eat breakfast. If we have, and this is, like I said, for younger kids, they need to be prompted to go to the bathroom. Then we do want to get our kids to get dressed to keep up with the routine. It's not necessary, but it just provides with a sense of change, so that they're following a routine. If they want to stay in there, if you're telling your kids that they can stay in their PJs, by all means, that's okay too. But for the purpose of this visual schedule, we have them to get dressed, brush their teeth, read, play outdoors, and lunchtime. So we have, this one's broken down just for the morning, so that it's not going to be overwhelming. And what I do encourage is that we don't have a visual schedule that is going to be for the full day. And there's many reasons for that. Number one, it's going to be too overwhelming for a child. Number two, if they see something on there that they don't like in the afternoon, it's going to be really hard to get them on task for things that have to get done in the morning. As well, things might change as your day is unfolding, and maybe you're not going to be able to get to something. So it just removes the potential of disappointing your child for something that they got really excited to do and they're not able to do. So having the morning broken down to however you want your format to be, just having those expectations there is going to provide them with some understanding of what is going to be happening in the morning, and then you can provide more details. For example, read. Well, what book are they going to read? You can provide them a choice during this time. So maybe it's working with their motivation and providing them with choices. You can read this or you can read this, choose one. Or if it's something that is on an electronic base whereby they're reading along with a device, then they can choose the story of which one they want to do to contrive some motivation there. But every single time that they get a task done, like I said, I use this, I put this behind the frame. That's how we started off with our visual schedule. And now we just write with a dry erase marker. But before, this is exactly what I would do, is I would have a visual schedule as such with the visuals and the writing, and I would put it behind the dry erase frame, and then my kids would put a smiley face or they would put a check mark in this section over here to say that the task is complete, and it would provide me with an opportunity to reinforce. And I'm like, great job, you ate your breakfast. I like the way that you got dressed. How did you like that book? Great job getting your reading done. So there's so many different opportunities that we can be motivating our children and reinforcing them at the same time. Now, another thing that you can do for this is you can buy double-sided Velcro, put it on the visual, and have little oh, the French word's coming to me again, the jetons, little chips, like bingo chips, and you put the other side of the two-sided Velcro on there, and each time that they get the task done, they can put the tokens on, and that's very motivating for children to do as well.
Hi, Sylvia. We have a question coming in. Do you have these visuals for a 5-year-old that you could share with us? Or maybe you could touch on, how to change the visuals based on the age of the child?
Yeah, so I create the visuals myself for families that I work with, tailored to their needs. But if you want to do this at home, you can use any kind of visuals that relates to your children. So you can print something out, you can and then cut them out and put them on a piece of paper. You can create a schedule yourself. You can reach out to me if you need help with that. But what you want to do for a 5-year-old is you want to make the tasks on the visual schedule as generic as possible. So I'm just going to share my screen again for that visual schedule. As you can see, for wake up, it's just a little clip art shadow of it, and breakfast is very generic. But if there's something that your child enjoys to eat, then you can put an array of pictures of things that your child likes to eat. Sometimes, rather than being generic, we need to be more specific for our children. So for them to really be able to relate to their visual schedule, maybe it's having a picture of your actual bathroom. They're like, oh yeah, that's my bathroom, that's where I go. And maybe it's an actual picture of your child brushing their teeth, because that's what's going to really connect with them. I know children on the spectrum, that some kids require that much of a specific of having a picture of themselves, and sometimes it has to be generic so that they don't become rigid on having it to be exactly as it is in the picture. Now, that's not just to say for children on the autism spectrum, that goes to say with whatever the strength and needs for children in general. So if it resonates more with them to have an actual image of themselves, by all means, I encourage it. If you feel as though it is better to be generic, then you can do generic. I tend to like what is going to work for the child. You can play it out. There's been for some families whereby I've done generic, and because it's not exactly the way that they expect it to be, we went to pictures. So you'll have to play around to see what will work for your child. I hope that answered that question. So we spoke about visual, and we spoke about how to put that in for clear expectations. So when we have those clear expectations, we are setting boundaries. And when we have set boundaries, clear expectations and set boundaries provide a lot of compliance for our children. And so they're able to understand what is expected of them. We are having a better understanding of what is expected of us during our roles during that time of the day. And it helps to create that balance of not needing to split our attention of like, oh my goodness, I wonder what the kids are doing and if they're okay, or oh, okay, I have to do that at work and that has to get done. So we really want to try during these uncertain times of having to work from home, we do want to try and at our best of our ability to be focused and be present in what we are doing at hand. And so when we are able to set up our children for success in the activities that they need to do, then we are able to set ourselves up for success for the tasks that we need to get done during our work. Now, with my kids being 13 and 11, there's definitely more independence on them. Whereas for families that have younger children and have these children that are, requiring a lot of attention or wanting a lot of attention and are uncertain because they're so used to, if they're in school or if they're in daycare, that they have a very structured environment whereby there's constant stimulation that's happening, from circle time to craft time to story time to interactive time, cause and effect, all those kind of things. They're constantly being stimulated. And so their expectations are of that to be constantly stimulated. Now, with our new reality of being at home, we have to look at how can we stimulate our children and be there for our children, but at the same time getting work done. So for that, we have to maybe adjust the hours that we are providing work, like while we're completing our work. And maybe that's a conversation to have with your employer, having set times whereby maybe you can get more work done when your child's having your nap, or maybe when they're having a downtime, and so that you can split your time and shift it whereby there's an even split throughout the day, so that you are providing some attention to your children and addressing their needs. But then when they have a downtime, you're able to do your work during that time as well, and making those boundaries put in place so that we can have some sort of work-life balance at home as well. The last aspect that I wanted to speak about is a very important one, and it's about the importance of responding versus reacting. Now, the magic does happen when you do know the difference between the two of responding versus reacting, because when we respond to situations, and there's going to be so many situations because we're on a little bit of an emotional roller coaster with everything going on, or some uncertainties, and we don't have a lot of structure. We're against our with what our new normal is compared to what we had before. We really want to implement the responding aspect as much as we can versus the reacting aspect. The responding aspect, when we're dealing with something with our children, with our colleagues, with our spouse, with our partner, with whomever, when we respond to a situation, we're able to rectify the problem a lot quicker and put solutions into measures into place than when we react. Now, I'm going to give you two examples here of responding versus reacting. And the first example I have for you is that of my son took a bath the other day, which is totally fine, right? Very happy that he took a bath, hygiene and such. However, his bath, he took all that time to fill the tub with water and was in the bath, and the bath lasted less than 5 minutes. Now, taking that into consideration, water costs money, and the bath is, if you're only going to spend that much time in the bath, you should have taken a shower. Now, what I could have done is I could have reacted and saying like, oh my goodness, do you know how much water costs? Do you know that you could have taken a shower and it would have taken less water, and what a waste, and da-da-da. I could have reacted to that. But instead, I decided to respond to that. Hey, bud, I like the way that you took a bath. Except next time when normally when we take a bath, we stay in the water for a long period, like a long time, so that we can enjoy the water and we can play in the water. If not, you can take a shower. That's why the difference between a shower and a bath is meant to sit in there for a long time and enjoy the water. And the shower is meant so that you go in and out, you wash yourself, and you get out. And so that's responding to it. So making the expectation clear of what a bath time means and what shower time means makes the decisions for him for next time. Now, he did decide to take a bath again, but this bath lasted a half an hour, and he decided to stretch in the bath and do all the stuff that he had to do in a bath. But the bath was utilized in an appropriate form as compared to the first time, and I was okay with that. And then I called him on it and saying, great job taking your bath, and just having that conversation. And he told me that he was stretching in it. And I'm like, that's awesome. It's a great time to stretch. So really reinforcing those things. Another example of reacting versus responding, your child uses your wall as a canvas. Now, we've all been there. It's happened to me as well when the kids were younger, but I get this often. And, you know, we get a lot of parents that react, and it's natural for us to react, right? But what happens when we react like, no, stop, oh my goodness, what are you doing? You should be writing on that. You're such a, and whatever that comes out of your mouth, that's all reacting to it. Now, I'm with you on that, you know, you would not be pleased if you are, you catch your child drawing on the walls, but responding to it is going to pay forward so much more, because what's happening is you're not going to startle your child. Your child is then going to be able to listen to what you are saying, and we're going to be able to model where they are supposed to be drawing as opposed to where they were drawing, and also having them help clean up. So the example of responding would be, oh, Sally, that's a really nice drawing, but is that we're supposed to be drawing? Are we supposed to be drawing on the wall? No, we're supposed to be drawing on paper. Come over here to the table and let's get you some paper. Now, this is going to be a reaction, obviously, for a child that doesn't know any better, and then a child that is younger, so that we explain the expectation of where they are supposed to draw. And I would actually encourage you to get your child to help you clean up the mess on the wall, so they understand that this is not somewhere that we are supposed to be coloring. So the difference between responding versus reacting there is by teaching them the expectation of where they're supposed to, as opposed to where they're not supposed to, and having them clean up is making them understand that this is something that we're not supposed to do. But then when they do color on a piece of paper, we can place it on the fridge or wherever the case may be, and we can highlight the picture that they did make and encourage them for more pictures to be on paper, and how we can showcase it that way. Just gonna take a little sip of water because there's a lot of talking on my part. So today I just want to highlight that we did talk about how to prioritize your work time versus your family time, and to divide the two so that when you are doing one or the other, that you truly are present in that time being, so that they have your full attention, they have your focus, and that you're really enjoying your time doing what you're supposed to be doing at that time, and filling your cup, because by filling your cup, you're going to be able to fill the cup of others as well. We discussed how clear expectations will save you time by implementing visual schedules, by making expectations clear. It's going to save you time by not having to clean up the messes of kids or your other people not being on the same page, so that we have no misunderstanding or miscommunication, that we have our kids getting their activities or getting their stuff completed while we're doing ours, so that we're not constantly trying to fix a problem within the house. We spoke about how responding versus reacting to situations will get you further ahead, because by responding, we're able to also have that conversation of what the child thought they were able to do, or or what they weren't supposed to do. But it's able to have a conversation when you're responding rather than reacting, because reacting, it feels more punitive, and then our children tend to shut down when we react to them, because then their defense mechanisms are also coming up full force, and they're not going to be willing to really have that engaging conversation. When we respond, we tend to have more of that engaging conversation that we're looking for, so that we can problem solve, so that it doesn't happen again. And when we have a work-life balance where, it's a positive impact in the whole family, so that at the end of the day, you're not feeling overwhelmed and exhausted, you're feeling a sense of balance, and you feel as though you've provided to your work, but you've also provided to your family at the same time. There's going to be some shifting in how things are going to work with your family, and it's going to be different for each family, but finding that balance of how much time you need to spend with your kids and how much time you need to spend on work. By understanding where those pieces fall, you're going to be able to create a visual schedule that is going to accommodate what needs to be done and is going to provide clear expectation for your children as well. If you guys do have further questions on what I've shared with you today, you are more than welcome to reach out to me. You can schedule a time to chat with me by going to my website at successandsteps.ca and scheduling an appointment with me. I do have different services that I offer. I do coaching and consulting. I do observational feedback, and this can be taken place. Sometimes I go into family's home, which is not necessarily an opportunity right now, but I also do observations and feedback based on videos that families share with me. And then I also offer workshop and professional development as well. So if you're interested in any of those or just wanted to chat further, in more specifics, then you can schedule a time with me at my website as well. Christy, do we have any more questions that?
Yes, so we do have one question that has come in here. I have a 4-year-old who doesn't do well with entertaining himself. How do we teach him to play or entertain on his own without making him feel like we don't care about him or want to spend time with him? He has independence in some things, but not in this area. My mom guilt is surely influencing my thought process here, but I need a better solution to the current scenario of me getting frustrated trying to get work done and he's calling mom 50 times to get my attention.
That's a great question. And for young kids, there's going to be that requirement of they're going to want our attention all the time. So really during that time, I think a visual for a 4-year-old is going to work really well because we can redirect back to that visual all the time of different tasks. I would even get your child to choose which activities. So if it's just like an activity time, then we provide them with an option. Now, for tasks whereby we want him, if he's good at playing independently with some stuff, we want to keep those independent activities as ones that we don't do with our child so that we know that they're going to be entertained during that time. We also want to look at how we are responding to situations. Now, if our child's coming to us all the time, but we have to get something done, it's not a bad thing to teach our child learn how to wait if you've just attended to them. So how we respond to something is either going to reinforce a situation to happen more, or it's going to decrease. So we're getting into positive and negative reinforcement here, but a behavior continues because a behavior is being reinforced. So I know mom guilt does come into play a lot, and we have to understand that we love our kids. We're always doing stuff for our kids, but in our current reality of how it is right now, we're going to have to start teaching our kids of how to be alone, to play with themselves with some toys for a short period of time, as long as we have eyes on them and we're able to make sure that they're safe, or if our partner is able to watch over them, to have that break as well, so that you're not always available, because then you're creating that expectation for yourselves to always be available. So think about different activities that you can introduce. Rotate your toys is something that I strongly suggest. When kids have access to a lot of toys all the time, they tend to forget what they have. But if you start rotating their toys or making their visual field of options a lot smaller, they tend to make better choices because they're not feeling overwhelmed.
Perfect, thank you. We've got a few more that have come in here. We touched on this one a little bit, but with younger children such as toddlers, they often absorb a lot of your time. How should parents cope with such a situation? So maybe a tad more advice on that.
So I think it really depends on, are you required to work right now? So I think you can, there's two different ways of answering this. If you need to work right now and your child is requiring your attention, I strongly suggest that you have that conversation with your employer. And I think given the certain circumstances that most employers are being accommodating for families to find what's going to work for them, and scheduling things around when your child is having downtime. Now, if your child is older, it's starting, you know, a lot of our skills or tasks have to be taught. And that's something that we tend to forget, is that children are born with certain abilities, but a lot of their skills are taught to them. So we have to teach our kids now how to wait when they're so used to having our attention all the time, because when we come home from work afterwards, they generally have our attention in the evening. So, you know, it's teaching them how to wait for things. It's teaching them for some patience. It's teaching them how to be occupied. Providing them with choices is definitely going to, we want to look at working with their motivation a lot here. So think about activities, or having your child write down or tell you about things that they love doing. So another strategy that I have used many times in the past is for when the kids were younger, and even when they're older now, they just write down themselves. But when the kids were younger, I just get a big piece of paper and I say, what's all, like, tell me all the things you love to play with. And I would either draw it out or I would write it out. I'd put a circle in the middle and I'd say the child's name. Let's just use Sally, like I like to play with, and then just draw all the things and write down all the things. And so you can choose that and turn that, whatever they shared with you, into a choice board, so that they can decide on different things that they can play independently.
Perfect. Any tips for managing work with a 1.5-year-old and a schedule that works well for the younger ones?
For a 1.5-year-old?
Yeah.
And is, do we know if parents are working? So it's just so I can answer it more specifically.
Yes, yeah, tips for managing work.
Okay, so to managing work. So if you have a 1.5-year-old, they're going to require a lot of your time. So it is getting the balance of stimulating toys for your child that they can play with safely, but that you can also have your eyes on them as well. It depends if you have that external support to help you out. We have to look at what are times throughout the day where you know from past patterns that your child requires more of your attention, and really balancing your schedule so that on times whereby you know that your child is more needy and requires more of your attention, that you are with them during that time, and times whereby you know that they can be stimulated with toys and some music, and providing them with cause and effect toys that is going to occupy and stimulate their brain, then we can get work done during that time. But at the same time, like if you don't have someone that's able to watch over them, but they're able to be in a playpen or an area whereby they're safe and they're playing with something within your visual field as well.
Perfect. One last question here. I have 7-year-old twins who constantly need attention as they just want to play all day long. This is challenging for me as both me and my husband are struggling to manage our own jobs while working from home. Any tips for greater clarity? They're looking for tips on how to steer them to independently manage their online learning facilitated by their school.
Okay, so 7 years old, at this age, children should be able to be independent. So when we're looking at a child that are, the twins that are requiring constant attention, we have to look at, well, what's reinforcing that attention, that need for attention. So we have to look at restructuring how the day unfolds. And I would encourage you to get your children involved with you writing down, you sharing with the children what your expectations are of, we have to work during this time and this time, and breaking down what they can be doing during that time. So this is where we have to put in clear expectations, and also put in our boundaries of, mom and dad are not available during these times. These are things that you can choose to be doing during this time. And a visual schedule is really going to help a child to stay on task and focus. And I would have the visual schedule for twins. I've worked with many families of twins in the past. I highly encourage you to have individual visual schedule for your children, so that it really resonates with them as individuals. And because they might have different strengths and needs. and they have different motivations. So we can modify it and make it very much tailored to their strength and needs, so that you can have compliance from them, and so that you can work with their motivation as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sylvia. It was
You're welcome.
so great to have you on our webinar today. Thank you so much to everyone who attended. We did also get quite a few questions about where you can find a recording of this webinar after the fact, and we will be uploading that to our YouTube channel by tomorrow morning. So stay tuned for that, for anyone who would like to watch this again or share it with a family member or friend or colleague. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, and have a great day. And I know that I've shared a lot of information with you today. So if you're feeling a little overwhelmed, I'm sorry about that. I was really trying to provide you guys with as much as I can within the hour. So feel free to reach out if you guys do have any questions or concern.
Thanks, Sylvia.
Thanks, Christy. Have a great day.